We're not exactly short of rainfall in Grangetown. It's part of our lives and something that we all take for granted. But maybe what we don't realise is what happens to it after the rain has fallen. Well, it goes down the drain, into the tap, then into the sea, doesn't it? Well, not exactly. The rainwater that falls in Grangetown gets pumped 8 miles into the Vale of Glamorgan through a series of pumping stations before being treated and then put into the sea near Barry, which is a very long way for the rainfall to travel and a lot of energy used just to get it to the sea. But we're only a mile from the sea here in Grangetown, with the River Taff running through the area. Wouldn't it make more sense for the water to go directly into the river, which is a much shorter distance away? Well, that's exactly what the groundbreaking Greener Grangetown project aims to do. A partnership between the City of Cardiff Council, Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water and Natural Resources Wales. A byproduct of completing the barrage in Cardiff Bay meant that rainfall and surface water in the Grangetown area had to be diverted away from the river. But that's about to change, because through pioneering sustainable technology, the Greener Grangetown project has found a way to catch, clean and divert rainfall directly into the river. These innovative techniques will include installing attractive planted areas that will help to absorb the water in the form of new trees, planters, grass channels, drainage curbs and rain gardens. The vegetation will actually clean the water naturally, as well as providing the community with more green space to enjoy. Rain gardens can be used in streets and are basically planted sections that catch rainwater and re-divert it into the Taff. This reduces the amount of rainwater entering the drainage system by allowing rainfall to soak into the ground, which in turn cuts down on the amount of pollution reaching our rivers and streams. We expect to remove around 42,480 square metres of surface water from the combined wastewater network. That's the equivalent surface area of about 10 football pitches to you and me, thereby significantly reducing the carbon footprint and costs associated with pumping the water through the existing network. The project has already drawn attention from all over Britain and beyond, winning global endorsements in the field. Such is the importance of the scheme, we've involved the public at every stage, and you can find out more at www.greenergrangetown.wordpress.com or get involved on Twitter with @GreenerGrange, #GreenerGrangetown. The scheme will increase biodiversity in the area and will transform Grangetown, ultimately making it a cleaner, greener place to live.
Right, thanks for seeing me this afternoon. I'm going to be as eloquent as the previous two speakers to talk about drainage. What I'm going to try and do this afternoon is talk briefly about the challenges that we have faced in Cardiff in trying to sell and deliver SuDS as an engineering solution to the City of Cardiff. I'll try to understand how to move this thing forward. Hang on a second. I want to split it up into 3 issues. How to win over the authority, how to win over developers, and how to win over the residents. Some of the issues are similar, with different questions and queries asked, but it has been a challenge, and it continues to be a challenge because Greener Grangetown is currently on site. I haven't brought any pictures today because it's not much green. It's a lot of big holes in pipes at the moment until we can make it look pretty again. But I will try and talk through some of the issues that we have faced and some of the issues that we can continue to face. Winning over the authority. What is SuDS? From an authority perspective, one of the biggest challenges I've had as a civil engineer is trying to explain what I do as a civil engineer to councillors and planners and other officers, and trying to explain and define what SuDS is. There are various different interpretations of what SuDS or sustainable earnage drainage systems are. That's been a battle, and is a continual battle for myself as an officer, because as everyone knows who has any experience as a local government at the moment, there's very little continuity in people in senior positions. There's a lot of chopping and changing because of cuts and funding issues. So that's a continuing explanation that's going on. It's not something that's accepted. It's something that's a continual conversation I'm having. Why does Cardiff need SuDS? Just like any urban city, 170 years ago, we had cholera and typhoid through the whole of the city centre as an industrial capital. Then we came along and built the Victorian sewer systems, now looked after by Welsh Water, most of them in mint condition. We got rid of those diseases, but those systems are combined networks. With the continuous development, continuous changes to climate change, those systems are becoming fuller. We have to find a way of getting surface water out of those systems and any new developments to try and keep the surface water out of those systems. The same as any other city in Western Europe that's gone through the same challenges as Cardiff has, and I believe Bristol did at the same time. The other question, but doesn't it cost more? That's the question I get off the local authority. I would argue no. Phil said earlier, if it's designed properly, it should cost less than a conventional drainage system. When it comes to retrofitting, obviously, it costs more than what you've got in the current system. But I would argue the gains across the spectrum of a scheme like Greener Grangetown, the health gains, the environmental gains, the engineering gains, the social gains, the economic gains are massive. And I think as an engineer, I have to look at those costs as a whole gain for the community. And we can actually put a cost in that project. We've actually tried to put a cost to that to understand the enormous gains that can be gained from water removal being the driver for a project. A maintenance nightmare is the next question I get from the authority. In retrofit, the reality is the situation is likely to be the local authority is going to adopt the system. Not always the case, but generally the situation. In a new build, there are different other options that I'll briefly discuss later. But certain, in terms of what we're doing at Greener Grangetown, we're putting a commuted sum in, which we're going to help to adopt and manage those green infrastructure after the maintenance period has been cleared by the contractor. We've extended that maintenance period. We learned a lot of lessons from the rainscape work done in Llanelli, and Welsh Water have been fantastic in their input on this project and continue to do so in terms of maintenance. And the contractor is going to be extended period in terms of looking after the landscaping. So if any of the trees or vegetation die because they're not planted properly, that'll be onto the contractor, not to the client. So we are trying to share the risk there. But in terms of maintenance, we are going to adopt these systems when they're complete. Who will pay for it? In this case, the project has been equally funded up to construction stage. In terms of design and consultation, there's been a memorandum of agreement between Welsh Water, ourselves and Natural Resources Wales, which is in Wales, is I always call it the Environment Agency with trees added, which never goes down well when I say that in Wales, but I'm across the border, so I'm hoping I'm going to get away with it this time. Phil, don't pass that one on, please, to the government. We shared the design and the consultation costs, and the reason why I mentioned consultation, it was mentioned briefly earlier. You can't consult on a scheme like this like my highways office would normally consult. I'm ashamed to say that normally we stick a leaflet through the door the week before, we're going to dig your street up for the next 6 months. Here's a contact number if you've got a problem. This is not the sort of scheme you can do this on. We have been talking to the community for 2 or 3 years about this project. And we're talking to the stage of them being part of the design team in terms of every street. We've got 12 streets which we're removing the surface water from, putting it into the river instead of the sewer system. Every street's different, predominantly because every street wanted something different, because they've really been part of the design and they feel part of the design. And they are all SuDS experts, far more than some of our planners are. And certainly it's been a huge input from the local community, and it's certainly been a massive learning curve for myself as a civil engineer, and it's been quite humbling actually to realise the importance of proper consultation with the community, not patronising them, taking their views very, very seriously. And again, the input from Welsh Water and the Rainscape scheme in Llanelli has been really, really crucial in helping us for that. In terms of construction, it's predominantly between the local authority and Dwcombe Welsh Water in terms of funding, and there's been an element from Natural Resources Wales as well. I will say it's a challenge. I know Phil talked about the wellbeing legislation mentioned that the Welsh Government have set up. And the wellbeing legislation cuts across a lot of different departments. You know, in delivering schemes like this, that's what you have to do. The problem is the funding mechanisms go vertically upwards, and the scheme cuts across. So when you go to a department in the Welsh Government and say, oh, can I have some money for Greener Grangetown, please? They say, well, is it a flooding scheme? No. No, you can't have any money then. You know, that's a real challenge. We have to, if we set up the legislation, we have to think about how we can fund that legislation from different areas of departments within a local authority or within a government. At the moment, I'm not sure that system works, and I found it very, very difficult when I've organised this scheme from start to scratch to find the funding. And obviously Welsh Water played a big, big part in that as well as the local authority. Still a challenge. This is the rude bit. Why can't we just BI and BO, which is basically, putting it crudely, bury it and bugger off, which is a phraseology that's used in engineering offices about drainage, and trying to break down the mentality. I spent 25 years doing exactly that as a drainage engineer, and just trained as a drainage engineer, as a civil engineer. I'm a rarity now in local government. And I think it's trying to break that mentality and say, actually, there are other ways of managing surface water. Sometimes we do have to bury it. Sometimes we can keep it on the surface. Horses for courses, but I always try and look at the amenity value and the amenity gains of sustainable drainage. It can always be pulled off. It could be contaminated ground. It could be density, development design problems. It could be topography. It could be a hill like that. You know, there can be challenges, but invariably we try to look at using the green amenity value because of the biodiversity gains and the environmental gains and the health gains that you get from that size of development. How to win over the developers? The question again I get from developers is, does it cost more? And it was mentioned earlier, Phil said from the very interesting, I haven't seen the results from that survey. It doesn't actually cost more, it costs less. I will challenge any developer on this, and any designer on this. If you've got a greenfield site, moving away from retro SuDS slightly, because I have to deal with new developments as well. If SuDS is part of the design and you're looking at amenity as a value, it costs less than burying it. You know, we have to accept that as an engineering. It is not more expensive. There are times when you have to bury, but if you can keep it on the surface, it costs less money, you create an amenity value. And I would argue to developers, and I do argue to developers, when people come and buy their houses and they see greenery, and they see flowing water, managed flowing water that doesn't cause a flood or create a flood because there's a hydro break upstream, that's an asset. That helps you sell houses. You turn over houses quicker, you make money quicker, you pay back the debt to the bank because you've got to make 20% to build houses in the first place on top of what you've spent. I think it's an asset, it costs less, it helps to sell houses. And I'm finding that developers in Cardiff are starting to accept that principle and accept that SuDS is a good option for them in terms of profit margin and in terms of selling houses. Who will maintain it? Who will own it and who will maintain it? These are two of the crunch issues. In terms of sustainable drainage, I deal with new build, I deal with retrofit. They do go apart at this point. In terms of retrofit, predominantly it's going to be the local authority because it's going to be tied in or around the highway network system. There might be exceptions in relation to what Fergus talked about in terms of water authorities earlier. Predominantly it's likely to be the local authority. In terms of new build, not necessarily. What we're experimenting with in Cardiff at the moment with some of the larger developments, we're talking up to 7,000 houses, single development area, is we're looking to use private landscaping companies. We're looking to put a charge, deeds of the new properties, tied into the deeds of the new properties. But as a local authority, we'd have step-in rights. So basically, you'd have a professional company managing SuDS features to the standards that we expect, to the designs that we've set as part of the planning conditions. And if there was a problem with these companies, we'd have step-in rights to the local authority to take that on. So what we wouldn't end up with is a situation where we got no money, no idea what's been put in, and no idea how to adopt or manage those SuDS systems. We have those from previous developments. We don't want any more in Cardiff. So we're setting up a backup system where we've got a company managing it, the designs we want, and it's a fee system coming from the houses, tied into the property values, tied into the documents of those deeds. So basically there's a constant fund coming through. To us, that's a really workable solution to pay for SuDS, because how do you set up a commuted sum for development at the start of a scheme when you don't even know what the detailed design is? By the time you get to the detailed design where you could put a commuted sum on it, the developer hasn't got any money left. So it's a catch-22 situation. It doesn't work. So we've come up with this solution in Cardiff, and we're hopefully pushing it forward, hopefully get the support from our friends in the planning department to try and move this ahead as a sustainable solution. In terms of retrofit, it is a commuted sum, but it is about getting design right. It's got to be maintenance friendly. If it's not maintenance friendly, it won't be maintained. I try to put all developments in. I shouldn't say this to any companies here that build any Class 1 interceptors with bypasses on them. I try not to use them because I don't know one in Cardiff is properly maintained. You get them in for plan permission, no one looks after them. If you've got a SuDS solution, a surface vegetation system that does the same, if there's a problem, you can see it. You know, these are systems that can be designed to be managed, to get the amenity value and do the job. All too often with interceptors, they're left alone, walked away, they pollute because they're never maintained. It's not statutory, so why should we care? This is a problem we all face, in Wales as in England. There is so little statutory legislation to force a hand for people to take SuDS seriously. I would argue if it's designed correctly and the maintenance schedule is set up, it saves developers money, you get better quality landscaping and amenity, and you get a more sustainable solution, and with all the multi-benefits you get from well-designed SuDS. And I'm starting, I believe, to wing over the housing developers in Cardiff. Even the usual suspects who are reluctant to go down the SuDS routes are coming over to our argument in Cardiff, not because it's statutory, because they think it's a better solution. Residents, possibly my biggest challenge. I live in Greener Grangetown. I didn't choose this area. It happened to be the best area to put sustainable drainage in Cardiff. I've even got other engineers to confirm that from Arup and other places. So I really didn't choose to live in the middle of Greener Grangetown at the moment because they know where I live. So there's no escaping. It's half the reason why I'm in Bristol, because they can't get hold of me this afternoon. What is SuDS? How do you explain what SuDS is to the general public? It's a lot of education, it's a lot of explanation. We're talking about meetings, we're talking about street surgeries, we're talking about websites, we're talking about Twitter sites, we're talking about door-to-door knocking, a constant information. And generally, the more you involve the public, my pitch on consultation is when people come up to you and say, will you stop sticking stuff through our door at Greener Grangetown on it? I've hit base level. I know I've hit the minimum level when I know from here upwards it's all positive. When they start complaining about getting stuff from me, I know I'm starting to get the message across. It's a really important thing. I don't use the word drainage, I use the word rainwater in all the exclamation. When they think of drainage, they think of sewage. They think sewage is going to go into this green garden in front of my house. I don't want sewage in my green garden. People have no understanding. You know, outside the industry, people wouldn't understand between the two. So you have to, the phraseology you use for the public is really, really important. You don't want to patronise them, but you don't want to scare them. You know, the other thing is with flooding. It's a drainage scheme, therefore you're putting it in because of flooding. No, I'm not. You know, I went to a certain local newspaper a few years ago to explain the scheme, and I must have spent 3/4 of an hour saying, please do not use the F word. Not the first F word, flood, the one that means something to me. It's nothing to do with flooding. Did I tell you? It's nothing to do with flooding. As another mention, please don't use the F word. It's nothing to do with flooding. Thank you, no problem. Next week, front page, flooding scheme for Grangetown. You know, it is difficult for people to understand the phraseologies. You have to explain that and keep taking that message to the public and to the media. Who will look after it? That's the other issue. If we say the council's going to look after it, you usually get the right comments coming back. But when they've been involved in the design and understand the vegetation and the trees and how the systems work, and having them, you know, having a feeling that they've been part and parcel of it to the point where they're choosing different types of trees, different types of vegetation, they have a choice of different types of plants as part of the consultation, and we'll stick to that choice. When they feel part of it, they feel more involved. When they feel more involved, there's more trust. When we use the logo of Greener Grangetown, we don't use the council logo, we use the Greener Grangetown logo because it's a project of partners between ourselves, Welsh Water and Natural Resources Wales. So it's important to share that and almost remove the scheme from the council to a separate organisation, a separate entity. There's a feeling of trust between ourselves and the project partners. Final question, as Fergus mentioned earlier, where do I park my cars? That's in plural, not singular. We had a public meeting a couple of months ago, and it was a meter contractor meeting, and someone had put an anonymous letter around the local community saying they're going to remove all your parking spaces, come along and more or less attack them for doing it. And we turned up with biscuits and nice printouts and nice people from Welsh Water, myself in my suit and everything, and we got 2.5 hours of shouting at us from the public in a small room. It was quite, you know, a heated conversation because people were scared. They were generally worried about what was coming their way. And you have to give as good as you get in those situations. If they smell fear, you're in trouble. But I think that those questions were wholly legitimate because these people, you know, those streets, that's my street, that's my house, that's where I park my car. I had to break the news to them that those houses were built in the 1890s before the invention of the internal combustion engine. That didn't go down too well, but I had to explain the fact that, you know, your car's as wide as long as a car. You know, if you've got 2 cars, you've got a problem. So, you know, we had to explain this scheme is not about creating car parks. This scheme is about creating sustainable drainage, squeezing commuters out of the area, prioritising local residents with residents parking to give them a greater priority, letting them choose the level by the number of people who apply for residence permits. So they had a big input on that. But it's a big education explanation, and the car issue is critical. We've done everything in this design to minimise the effect on parking, to maximise the quality of the street and the quality of the build. It's still a concern for everyone, but I think that we've got most people in the community on board in what we're trying to achieve. This is a quick case study talking about Greener Grangetown. This is the logo that we use on everything in terms of any letters that go out, any posters that go out, just to have that continuity of message. We've mentioned the working with Welsh Water and Natural Resources Wales. I would point out this isn't a Rainscape scheme. I've just mentioned Rainscape on here because it's obviously something Welsh Water involved in it. It's outside Rainscape, but we've learned an awful lot from Welsh Water's experience of Rainscape and tried to learn those lessons in Greener Grangetown. Anything that doesn't work in Greener Grangetown, hopefully we can use that as a pioneering step for other projects in the city and beyond. This is Grangetown, briefly just to explain. It's an inner city area down by the docks. It was built to predominantly house people working in Cardiff docks and in the steel industry. 20,000 residents. It's the most culturally diverse area of Wales now, with a large ethnic minority community in this area as well. Unsustainable drainage. At the moment, as the video showed, the water is a matter of 20 or 30 yards from the River Taff, because all the outfalls are blocked off when Cardiff Bay Barrage was impounded, which is now a huge freshwater lake. All that water is pumped through the combined network all the way to the other side of Dinas Powys, where it goes through tertiary treatment, then it goes all the way down to Penarth and it's pumped out to sea, and it's 30 yards from the River Taff. So what we're doing is you know, obviously common sense. When we explain this to people and the distance this sewage travels and the rainwater travels, you know, the question that gets, why didn't you do it 10 years ago? You can't win these situations, can you? So this is a bit of a rough and ready scan, but what it shows is a consultation element. I'll just walk over here briefly. When we did the initial consultation, what, 3 or 4 years ago, something like that, that was the original design we did. We had feedback from the public, we went to that design, so we went back to another design. We didn't like that, so we went to the next design. This is the final design we've come up with. This is the 6th design, and predominantly the things that have changed this have been obviously service situations and the highway design, and effectively it's community priorities. In this particular street, Bargoed Street, they wanted the local trees in the centre, but they wanted parking. In other areas, we kept more trees. Parking was a priority in the street. Those trees were bought by local residents, so they wanted those local residents, those kept. That particular one is in a very large rain garden because there's a huge BT telephone duct that goes up there. So every street is different because of that. And that's the level of change we've had from real consultation, not just a patronising letter to the door, but genuine listening to what the locals wanted and trying to do everything we can to accommodate their priorities in terms of the street design. Currently, half of that has been complete in that street. I live outside that main garden there, so I'm going to lose my parking space. I blame Arab for that, but too kind of that. But certainly, it is taking shape, and people are quite excited because they can follow on the website what the design looks like. They can go out and talk to the contractors. The contractor is a full-time liaison officer in order to keep in touch. In terms of the consultation, there's been continual messaging. Everything's bilingual in Wales. This is the sort of typical layout leaflets we give out to people. This is Taff embankments where we're going to be widening the footpath, protecting the existing trees, not chopping them down. Rain gardens on the end to stop people parking, the bollards to stop parking them, a rumble strip up the middle to slow the traffic down. We're using this project not just about drainage, this is about improving cycling, improving walking. This is the busiest cycle route in Wales. The Taff Trail goes along this street. So we're removing elements of parking, making it safer to walk, making it safer to cycle, improving the green amenities in the area. All this being driven by surface water removal from the combined sewer network. Get all these gains if you keep SuDS on the surface. You know, it's a multi-benefit and a multi-gain for an inner city community. And I say to people, if we can retrofit in an inner city Cardiff, how the hell can't we do it on a greenfield or brownfield site with nothing on it? There are no excuses. It can be done if you choose to do it. Just some of the ideas in terms of communicating. It's continuously going on. Public meetings, street surgeries. We literally rock up at the end of some streets with a couple of trestle tables, a couple of covers over the top, giving leaflets out, knocking on doors, really trying to get to people, websites, local media, local councillors, religious groups. There's a big mosque in one of the streets, so we're continuously talking to them. The local allotment society, history society, cycling groups. That's been the hardest crowd I've had, is the cycling groups. They don't like any cars, they just want cycles, which is a hard one to win over. SuDS have been very helpful in designs and ideas. They have a full-time contractor liaison officer, something else we've learned from Welsh Water's experience in Llanelli. We've even got car window stickers, schools, shops, businesses, even to the point where we do Christmas leaflets out to people wishing them a Happy New Year, we're still here. Everything with the logo of the project on it all the time. I mentioned car window stickers. Another lesson again from Llanelli is we try to give priority for local people. When parking is squeezed when we're doing the work, we want the contractor to know who the local residents' cars are, so every street has one house has one sticker given out when they're working in that street, so we can prioritise for them. When we got a road closure on, we warn commuters if their cars are in there, we will have them moved by the police, and we do have them moved if we have to. But generally, there haven't been too many difficulties because the locals have had enough space to park, which is really, really important. These are some of the multiple benefits. 42,000 square metres being removed. Monetised benefits, green space, improved air quality because of the trees. We've planted a couple of hundred new trees. Habitat creation, increased biodiversity, improved urban environment. We're working with the Wisdom project. I think Welsh Water might still be involved in it, I'm not sure. Well, we've got a monitor on my water meter anyway, Fergus, you must be involved somewhere. And it's a European-wide water resilience project we're involved with, and a sequel assessed project as well. Finally, delivering SuDS in Cardiff. As a local authority, through my boss David Brain, who's sitting over there now, we're putting together a developer's guide to sustainable drainage. Talking with the Welsh Government, we're going to put a document ahead for people to use as developers, whether you've got one house or 1,000 houses in Cardiff. You're going to have the opportunity to have something off the shelf to look at. I wouldn't say it's the same as the SuDS manual. The SuDS manual is a practitioner's guide. We're trying to design something so someone who's never understood anything about SuDS can walk in, pick up and understand it. So it'll be a welcome page, it'll be colour-coded, so you'll be able to follow around the basic principles, what we're trying to achieve. There'll be flow charts to follow to the technical guidance. So it'll make it much easier for developers to understand what we want as a local authority. Local examples in new retrofit. What we want to do from Greener Grangetown is to try and show people what can be done and what can be achieved by different organisations working together, realising we've got the same customers, the Welsh Water, Natural Resources Wales and Cardiff Council, and realise by putting our money together and our expertise together, we can come up with a scheme with so many multiple benefits. And as I say, the final statement, to make the sustainable management of rainwater as a driver for a cleaner, greener capital city. Thank you.